Malphite is now one of the best solo queue top laners. Orianna has a new build you need to be playing, while the Azir adjustments could actually make him pick or ban in pro play for this year's World. So we've got all this and much more to cover in today's video as we provide you guys with updates on all the new meta trends along with the solo queue tier list for every single role. But first, some hard truths. YouTube is built for the algorithm, not your LP. That means clickbait titles, junk food topics, and stretching simple tips for watch time. We're part of that system too, just like every guide and YouTube channel. And because every video is randomly surfaced to you as a singular guide and topic, advice often contradicts what you just watched. No context, no plan, more confusion. On our website at SkillCapped, however, we're free from all that, allowing us to focus on what actually matters. We teach in the most efficient way to really rank you up fast, with the same premium editing and challenger level coaches you see here, just without the algorithm's hoops. Start with our essentials courses for every role, updated for season 15. These are meticulously planned step-by-step guides that build your fundamentals in the right order. Once you finish essentials, move into the advanced courses. Deep dive wave control, advanced mechanics, the proven bronze to diamond climb paths, and literal world record jungle clears for each jungler, all structured so lessons stack instead of contradict. While you follow these learning paths, we also release our popular challenger walkthroughs, new sessions every week showing how to abuse the best meta champs for your elo. Supported with an AMA section below each video, which we always respond to. We back it with a climb 5 divisions improvement guarantee while you're actively using SkillCapped, plus a 30-day refund change of mind policy on top of that, so there's literally no risk. Stop trying to mix and match random guides and start following a structured path, far away from all the noise. Click the limited time discount link below to join SkillCapped today. So the biggest winner up in the top lane for 25.20 was Malphite, as he's gained around a 1% win rate from his buffs. Malphite is such a brain-dead champion to add to your champion pool right now because he does such a good job at shutting down many of the meta top lane picks. Jax is being spammed at a pretty high rate right now, and Malphite is winning above 53% of the time in the matchup. The fact that Malphite has so many good matchups, and then even in his bad matchups, he can still be a useful champion due to the teamfight presence he provides, makes him a really reliable top lane pickup. So you'll find Malphite at the peak of the top lane tier list for 25.20 as he slots into the OP tier. Top lane Kayn is a pick that we've been tracking over these past few patches, as initially when he was buffed, the champ wasn't performing all that well, but these past two patches he's been just shy of a 50% win rate. It was back in 25.17 where Kayn received mana buffs to his Q and W, which allows him to lane a lot better. There's one matchup in specific that top lane Kayn is absolutely feasting against right now, and it's Dr. Mundo. Over the past few patches, Kayn has had above a 54% win rate in the Mundo matchup, which is pretty absurd considering Kayn's overall win rate is sitting around 49%. So why does Kayn perform so well into Mundo then? Well, the consistent damage and sustain that Kayn has allows him to outlast Mundo in extended fights. The summoner spell combination of Ignite and Teleport is what's working best on Kayn top, and the Ignite makes it so that Mundo's healing is significantly diminished. Mundo doesn't have a ton of early kill threat either, so it allows for Kayn to trade more aggressively and get a lot more passive stacks. Basically, any top lane champ who lacks significant all-in threat early on in lane is who Kayn likes playing against. So Mundo, Sion, Nasus, and Cho'Gath are a few of his better matchups. Kayn top does still struggle pretty heavily though into the likes of Garen, Darius, Fiora, and Aurelia, so you can't really blind pick him to a lot of success. If picked as a counter in the right spots, then Kayn top is definitely worth looking into right now, but because of the fact he does struggle into many of the meta fighters, it holds him back from being placed higher on the tier list, as we are slotting him in to B tier for 25.20. So here's a look at how we have the top lane tier list constructed for 25.20, as the OP tier will be locked down by Garen, Quinn, and Malphite. With the Warwick nerfs coming through for this patch, it has finally pushed him down and out of the OP tier level, but the nerfs weren't overly impactful, so he's still a good S tier pick. Camille adjustments have played out to expectations, as they haven't led to a significant shift in power for the pick, so she remains in the top lane A tier. The changes were definitely skewed more towards helping her in the higher elos and giving more skilled Camille players additional power, because it was her early game that got buffed while her scaling was nerfed. So if you understand the limits of Camille and can really take advantage of the added damage and cooldown decrease on W, then the changes were definitely positive, but for newer, inexperienced Camille players, losing the scaling armor does hurt more. The 25.20 nerfs to Volibear have finally pushed him off his pedestal, as he's no longer an OP tier jungler. With that being said, the nerf just barely pushed him out of that OP tier territory, so he's still sitting completely fine up in the S tier. Something to keep an eye on over these next few patches and a new build to try is a Trinity Force rush into Spear of Shojin. Now that the Cosmic Drive build has been nerfed on 2 separate occasions, this Bruiser Volley build has started to see more play as it's become indirectly stronger. There aren't a ton of players picking up the build right now, so the sample size is quite low, and we can't definitively say that it's better than Cosmic Drive, but in its limited play, Trinity Force is winning at the same rate as Cosmic Drive. We've been pretty vocal about how Jax Jungle is a really underrated champ for a few patches in a row, and in 25.20 2020, he's finally seen a big play rate spike, from 2% up to 4%, as players have started catching on to the champ's current power in meta. Since Jax just got that buff to where he gains way more armor and magic resist when he uses his R, the ability for Jax to just straight up stat check so many other bruisers at level 6 is incredible. There aren't very many AP spellcasting champions in meta for jungle right now either, so it allows for Jax to fit in incredibly well. Even the AP junglers who are played a lot right now, like Diana, Sylas, and Echo, Jax actually plays really well into them because his E can prevent Diana and Echo from proccing their passives, while you can block Sylas' passive damage as well. Diana is the jungler on another level above all else right now, but if there's one champ who's directly below and the second best solo queue jungler for 25.20, it's definitely Jax. So there were actually quite a few jungle changes for this patch, but none of the adjustments ended up being all that significant. Briar and Warwick were both nerfed, and even though they did lose over 1% win rate, they were both excelling so much higher above all other junglers in 25.20, which means they're still good S tier picks despite the nerfs. Pantheon buffs have played out as expected, with the changes not being nearly enough to move him back into a powerful spot, so he remains in the C tier. Wukong was the one champion hit the hardest by the 25.20 adjustments. We noted in the pre-patch tier list how we were leaning towards the changes being net negative, and they've played out that way, with Wukong losing about 1% win rate. So nothing over the top, but the nerfs have forced Wukong down out of the S tier and into A. As for the Graves changes, they've been incredibly neutral thus far, not leading to any significant shift in win rate. With his Q bonus AD ratio being lowered and base damage going up, it will be interesting to see if a bruiser build catches on in the coming patches. Trinity Force and Sundered Sky are being picked a little bit right now, but sample size is really low, so it's hard to tell if they're actually better than lethality. So with the Orianna changes coming through for this patch, there's a few things worth updating for the champ. First off, W max first is completely terrible now, so just go back to maxing Q first into W second from here on out. Secondly, Rod of Ages has become a weaker item on Orianna because of the W base damage nerf. The rush item outperforming everything else by a pretty wide margin for 25.20 is Blackfire Torch. It's a burn build of Blackfire into Liandry's that's been finding the most success on Orianna, so you should definitely give it a go instead of the Rod of Ages into Archangels. Ludens into Shadowflame is a good alternative into more squishy champs, but if you're against a bruiser or tank comp, then opting for Blackfire into Liandry's is extremely underrated. So the Azir changes were listed under the adjustments category of the patch notes, so you'd think they would land power neutral. However, that has been far from the case, as the changes were just huge buffs. Riot reduced the AoE damage of Azir's W in the early game if it's hitting multiple targets with it, but buffed his single target DPS and also buffed his damage on E. So in isolated scenarios, Azir is just 100% better than he was last patch, and that has turned out to be way more impactful than losing some AoE damage potential. Azir has seen the biggest win percentage swing for any champ in 25.20, as he's gone from being down around 46% last patch up to above 48%. So still not in the greatest of spots for solo queue, but definitely not a C tier worthy pick either, so he's being bumped into B tier. It's going to be really interesting to see how this influences Azir's presence at this year's Worlds, because whenever he's above a 48% win rate in solo queue, it usually means he's pick or ban in pro play. So the only mid-patch change we have made to the mid lane tier list in 25.20 consists of Azir being lifted out of C tier. There are actually a few other mids changes for this patch as well, but none of them saw more than a 1% win rate swing due to their adjustments. Anivia was the biggest winner, seeing around a 1% spike, and she's definitely a mage worth considering now. Anivia is right on the verge of owning an OP tier spot for mid, and if we do see a nerf come through for either Morgana or LeBlanc in 25.21, then we definitely consider moving Anivia up. Morgana is far and beyond the best mid lane champ that you can play for solo queue right now because of how easy it is to be impactful on her with a limited amount of games. It takes no skill at all to throw W on the wave and generate perma priority, and having that priority all throughout the lane just opens up so many windows of opportunity for you and your jungler. So because there wasn't a single ADC who received changes for 25.20, there isn't much to update for the role, as Jinx and Ashe are going to remain the two OP tier champs. Since 25.20 is the patch that Worlds is being played on, hopefully for 25.21 we actually see some more significant changes for the role. I guess Riot went pretty light for this patch because they don't want the meta to change at all as we head into Worlds. Even though he's not a traditional ADC, Veigar as a bot lane carry is looking quite strong now after his WAP ratio buff. The champ has been good as a bot lane carry even prior to this change, so he's one of the many mages that you can play to great success in the bot lane right now. An Enchanter support who's seen a bit of a resurgence as of recent and being moved into the S tier for mid patch is Seraphine. So it was back in 25.19 when Seraphine was buffed, and she's been performing as one of the better enchanters since then. Something that gives us even more confidence to move Seraphine into S tier is the fact that she's performing well without players even building her optimally. 50% of Seraphine players aren't even upgrading their support item correctly, as Dreammaker and Solstice Slay are the best options. However, so many Seraphine players opt for Realm Spike. Especially with the recent buff to Seraphine W to where it now heals more, playing her with enchanter specific builds are outperforming damage oriented builds. A lot of Seraphine players like to go Shadow Rylai's with Blackfire Torch, but the setup is just far inferior to Echoes of Helia with Redemption. Dreammaker or Solstice Slay with Echoes of Helia as the rush and Redemption second is the setup that you should try on your Seraphine right now. And in terms of Seraphine's optimal ADC pairings right now, Ashe is absolutely amazing with the pick. Ashe R and Seraphine R provide an insane amount of long-range catch power, and the chain CC potential from the spells allow you to capitalize on enemies being out of position super well. So the support meta has definitely taken a bit of a turn over the past few patches, with melee supports on the downfall, while enchanters and mages have moved up. We still have Melio and Nami in the OP tier, as there have been no other supports who are close to contesting them for those slots. Because of melee supports always being higher priority in pro play, Riot has had to over-nerf champs for solo queue like Rel, Alistar, and Rakan, and because enchanters aren't picked nearly as much in pro play, they get to sit in more powerful positioning for solo queue. There's one melee support who's currently in a really good spot though that a lot of players are sleeping on, being Amumu. Amumu got a few really nice Q buffs in 25.18, and he's been performing at a top tier level ever since. Maokai Sport is another one who's always more undervalued by the general player base, as he's right up there with Amumu in terms of being one of the best melee engaged supports right now. Both champs just provide absolute insane team fight value, which is so good to have for Season 15, where a lot of your games are going to come down to that one fiesta of a fight at Otacon. Amumu R and Maokai R are insane value when fighting in those choke points, so two champs that are worth considering right now if you prefer melee supports over enchanters. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, that's a complete look at the solo queue tier list as we reach the midway mark of 25.20. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.